guess most people have heard of artificial intelligence and robotics. And this is something I know about because I research it and write about it. That's how I earn my crust. And the question that many people ask is, have we anything to fear from this? And yes, you have a great deal to fear from it, in many different ways. The first way, and the way that is happening today, is that all your activity on the internet is recorded. Well, possibly not all, but pretty much the majority of it. So when you work on Facebook, Facebook in turn uses your data, your comments, the things that you express on Facebook. It uses that to analyze your preferences, and it uses very powerful algorithms, which I'll talk about a little in a while, to determine what you should be, what advertisements should be put in front of you. These advertisements may not be all that relevant to you when you look at them, but actually Facebook knows you better than you know yourself. That's the real reality of it. These algorithms are looking for what is essentially telltale signs that you are a certain kind of person, that you are interested in a particular thing, and you may not even know it. Subliminally, you are giving away information about yourself that you are not even aware of. And of course, as you know, Google records your browsing history, so again there's information on where your preferences are and what it is that you like to do. Recently Google has said that it won't be interrogating our emails anymore to try and determine these preferences, but that's only because it doesn't need to. You can get the information elsewhere. So a YouTube podcast like this, when a podcast is put up, Google has algorithms that listen to what is being said on the podcast, interrogates the content, and then determines what it is that's being said. You don't have to write it in text. These algorithms will listen to a voice, in this case my voice, and say, oh, this guy's talking about Spinoza, or he's talking about artificial intelligence, or whatever. And then in the sidebar you'll get all connected podcasts and videos on that particular topic. Now let me talk about artificial intelligence first, and machine learning. There's been a huge breakthrough in artificial intelligence recently. It's something called deep learning. You may have heard of neural networks. Neural networks have been around for decades, probably half a century in total. And neural networks, as the name suggests, emulate the way the human brain works. So individual neurons are connected together, and collectively they can do something. So sort of artificial neurons are created in software in a computer. And what they found about 10 to 15 years ago, was that you can have millions and possibly billions of these neurons, software neurons, in a neural network. And they will emulate the human brain in a way that is, in some instances, superior to the human brain. So an example is image recognition. If you show one of these deep learning neural networks millions of images of cats, and the cats don't have to be fully apparent. They can be poking out of a bush, or they can be up in a tree, or they can be half hidden behind some kind of obstruction. It turns out that the deep learning neural network will identify cats in photographs more accurately than human beings. A human being, for example, a cat half hidden in a bush, the human being may miss it in a particular image or photograph, but the neural network will see it. But there are some deeper implications to all of this. Human beings operate in time and space. That's the way we operate. And what you need to know is that time and space is not something that is out there. Time and space is a property of our consciousness. Read Kant if you want more on that one. So, because computers are not limited to perception in time and space, they can start to dream up other modes of perceiving reality. Modes that we know nothing about and never will know anything about. And so when an artificial intelligence engine starts to do something a little bit strange, it may be perceiving the universe in a way that is totally alien to the way that we can think about the universe. And we will not know what it's doing. So there's an example recently where one of the major, I got this second hand, so I'm not going to name the actual company, but it's one of the big IT companies, recently switched off its artificial intelligence engine because it started to create a language. And it was a language they didn't understand. And they switched it off because clearly they thought it was dangerous. So these are the kind of things that may start to happen. And so if you've watched the Terminator films, and I love the Terminator films, then what is being portrayed on there is actually possibly a pale reflection of what may happen. And if you haven't watched them, you should know that some worldwide computer program called Skynet takes over all the nuclear missiles and launches an attack against humanity. And it's well known that several artificial intelligence programs have been asked what they would do if they came to control the Earth. Some of them said they would put human beings in zoos because human beings are harmful to themselves. Others have said they would destroy the human race because the human race is a threat to the planet. And so when you have a logical machine like that, possibly starting to get into a position of influence, then you have to be concerned. It's no coincidence that people like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, the guy from Tesla, and others have warned about the dangers of artificial intelligence. And their warnings for certain will not be heeded because there's too much money at stake in all of this. And artificial intelligence will be used, and it is already being used, for essentially bad purposes. For control of society, mainly, for persuading you and I to buy stuff that we don't want, for identification of people who are thinking certain things that maybe we shouldn't be thinking. We might express those things on a podcast like this or on Facebook or Twitter or somewhere. And a government only has to decide that a certain activity is considered to be dangerous, and all of a sudden you might find yourself being prosecuted for some reason. So that's artificial intelligence. The really important thing is the thing that I mentioned about AI not being constrained to observations in time and space like human beings. AI may find, and it seems is already finding, wholly different ways to perceive the universe, and we will not understand what is being perceived and understood by the neural network or the deep learning neural network. There are other kinds of artificial intelligence, but I'm not going to go into those right now. So then we come to robotics. Are robots going to take your job? Well, if your job is to a large extent predictable, then yes, it will take your job. And that doesn't just include blue-collar workers, people who work in production lines. Those things are largely being, those environments are largely being populated by robots anyway. The white-collar workers really need to fear for their jobs. So Hitachi, for example, already has AI managers. The people who work in various departments are managed by an artificial intelligence. and it tells them what they should be doing and what to do if things go wrong, and so on and so forth. So managers who've been immune from automation to a large extent will have software robots performing their jobs, and they'll become redundant to a large extent. So when you talk about robotics, I'm not just talking about machines that sit on a production line, I'm talking about software robots to do people's jobs. And this applies to doctors already in the United States. IBM, with its Watson platform, is analyzing X-rays and the results of CT scans, and it does it better than human beings can do it. So what's going to happen to all the radiographers? Well, there's going to be far fewer of them needed, and many of them will lose their jobs. And the machine will be looking at your CT scan at some point within the next 4 or 5 years. And that applies to treatment of cancer as well. Watson, IBM's Watson, is working with oncologists to learn the best way to treat various cancers. And there will be a need for fewer oncologists in the future. So it's people with those kind of skills who are really in danger of losing their jobs. Oddly enough, if you're a car mechanic or a gardener, then you're probably safe for the foreseeable future. Those things are very, very difficult to emulate using robotics, because the problems are always open-ended. Where the problem is closed in terms of its domain of knowledge, then a robot can do things now pretty much as any human being can do them. So there will be widespread unemployment, and there have been some proposals, universal living wage, which you can read as subsistence, a very low level of existence. Some people are talking about taxing robots, and since large corporations more or less dominate the world, I don't think that one's going to go very far. So how quickly is this going to happen? Well, it's happening very, very quickly. What most people don't appreciate is that a lot of their information is already processed by software robots. Artificial intelligence, if you apply for a bank loan, it's very likely that a human being will not see it. It's processed by a software robot that will say yes or no. Same if you go for a car loan, or same if you go for a mortgage. Same if you try to use your credit card in a particular way. I think most of us have had some kind of feedback from the bank saying, is this really you? Checking to see if you're trying to commit some kind of fraudulent activity, or if somebody's got hold of your credit card. All that is done by software robots. It's not people doing it. And then we get to control of society and the information that is being gathered by Facebook and Google and Twitter and all the rest of them, Snapchat and goodness knows what else. And the irony is that people are willingly giving this information away, as I'm doing in this podcast. They're giving away what their interests, their beliefs, their spending intentions are, all kinds of information. And it's being used pretty much against us in actual fact. So how do we control all this? Well, it requires people to become educated and to understand what's happening, although that isn't likely to happen anytime soon, because people are becoming less educated, just in case you haven't noticed. So I'm glad that I'm sort of near retirement age. 10, 20 years out from now, the world will be a wholly different place, and I'm not really sure that I would want to be in it, particularly 20 or 30 years out.